You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and the interview subject I have coming up for you is Bill Hudson from the outfits Am Morbid and Northtale. Now, the reason for the chat is to promote Northtale's new album, their debut. It's called Welcome to Paradise. It'll be out soon. Today's date being July 10th, 2019, so it won't be too long after this date that I think you can have a listen to it on your streaming service of choice. But the other thing I want to mention too is that I've long admired Bill. I think he's an extraordinary guitarist and his story is worth listening to. So we talk about his journey from Brazil to the United States and into the many bands that he now performs in. So let's get to it. Here he is, the one and only Bill Hudson. Hey mate, what's been happening? You're coming back from overseas.
Give me just a second because I'm driving.
All right.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. Yeah, it's coming through loud and clear. It's great.
Great, man. How are you?
Mate, I'm doing very well. I'm all the better for talking to you. I've got to tell you, mate, I've been following your career ever since I found out you joined Am Morbid. And then, of course, I went back and looked at some of the other work that you did, and it's no surprise now that you've got a superb album out in Welcome to Paradise by this brand new outfit, Northtale. So, mate, my first question will be pretty obvious, mate, but you do a lot, so how the hell do you fit it all in?
Well, I mean, Northtale is sure a new experience for me because, like you said yourself, I've been with a couple of bands, very well-known ones and otherwise, but I've always in my career been the hired gun. You know what I mean? I've always been the guy that people call to come and play. Now, specifically with Am Morbid, that's it's a little bit different because we sort of started the band together, I guess, me, David, and Tim, but it's still all Morbid Angel music, you know what I mean? Yep. So I'm still playing covers, it was the same with Udo, it was the same with Doro. That's been always my position. Now, my whole life, I wanted to be a professional musician. So in whatever capacity that was to happen, was good for me. So in a way, I was happy until about a couple of years ago when I was like, you know what? I have a pretty good life. I tour, 7-8 months out of the year. I play with my idols. But then I started noticing that something was missing. And that something missing, man, is to be able to express myself with my own music, because it seems like a lot of people know my name, but not a lot of people know what I sound like.
Sure. Yeah. Yep, I get that. Yeah.
So Northdale was, well, first of all, it started as idea of my solo album, right? And I wanted to have like an instrumental solo album, like 10 songs and, 2 with vocals and 8 instrumentals or something like that. But and the singer I wanted was Christian Erickson, that was in Twilight Force at the time. Now, I wrote Christian online and I said, hey, man, I would like to record these songs. I'm a really big fan of your voice. But long story short, he wasn't really into it. He liked it. He liked the songs. He even sent me some feedback, but he was too busy with Twilight Force. They were touring. They were doing doing big tours, and he was, he just didn't have time. And me on my end, I was touring with Udo from Accept, playing
cool.
that Accept. I was super busy with that. Between that and Am Morbid, I really didn't have time for anything. And I was like, maybe we'll revisit that idea at some point. But then then I saw that he left Twilight Force. Christian left Twilight Force. And I immediately sent him a message. I'm like, dude, I don't know what happened. I don't even care what happened. But whenever you're ready, we should start a band. And at the same time, our drummer Patrick also contacted Christian about this, about the idea to start a band. So it was kind of like serendipitous in a way because we weren't talking to each other about it. It was just a coincidence. Christian then finally gets back to me and tells me, yeah, you know what, man, let's start a band. And I have a drummer, Patrick Johansson, and I'm like, oh my God, I know Patrick. We talk about this all the time. I'm a big fan of Ingve, so let's just do it. So from that moment on, my solo project was put in the back burner, and Northdale became a band. And that was it. He came, and I can speak for Christian here too, because he was kind of in the same place. He was in Twilight Force, and as much as they were doing stuff, it wasn't really his band.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Whereas we're partners, and this is our band. We kind of run it the way we want to.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, but I'm going to bring you back to a post that you made. It was on Facebook or Twitter, and I thought it was a really good post that you did. I might have retweeted it, but I remember you said something about starting a new band as like opening a typewriter factory, and I thought, brother, you nailed it. But do you remember that one? Do you remember when you posted that?
I do, because I think that.
Well, it's so heartening to hear that you still had the courage to do it, because people do need to hear your music. And you said something at the top there that I think is important, which is that you are very photogenic. You actually look like a rock star, I've got to say. You've got the whole look down pat, but people didn't know really what you sounded like yourself. We'd heard you in Trans-Siberian Orchestra, I Am Morbid, all of the other things you'd done. You mentioned Doro, Udo.
Yeah.
But hearing you for yourself on your own 2 feet, what it's been able to do, it's like, aha, this is what he sounds like when he produces the music that he wants to play all by himself. So I think it's a fairly accurate summary of the journey, yeah.
Man, that's exactly it. The image thing was something that, at the beginning, I grew up as a fat kid. I've always been bullied. Girls always made, I never got girls. So at one point in my life, and this was only like 7 or 8 years ago, I decided that I wanted to look good, but good for bands. I wanted to be a product that bands wanted to hire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the time, around the same time that I started thinking that, I did an audition, right? I did an audition here in Los Angeles for a former American Idol contestant. And I killed the audition, but I was really overweight. I was fat. I wasn't really, I wasn't really the best looking guy. This is like 2011. And right after me, this kid comes and plays like shit. He didn't even know the song. The band had to start over. But oddly enough, he got the job.
Yes.
Because he looked really good. And I'm like, you know what? That's it. It doesn't really matter. I hate to say, but it doesn't really matter how you play.
You're right.
People say, well, to an extent, it doesn't. No, it does not. It does not. The biggest guitar heroes nowadays can't play for shit. The modern guitar heroes. I'm not talking about Steve Vai.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Ingve. I'm not talking about Satriani. I have students who are better than most of the people putting guitar instrumental records now. And I don't. That was also part of why Northtale became a thing, because I don't want to be in that market. I don't want to play in a bill with 4 guitar players that play 8-string guitars and gent. That's just not my thing.
Yep, thank God.
And and I was like, you know what? It is like opening a typewriter, because you spend all this money and time and energy making a record that everybody's gonna download anyway, and then they're gonna talk shit about it on YouTube. It's the typewriter comment was more like, why would you open a typewriter factory right now when everybody else has moved on to iPhones? Yeah,
I got the comment. Yeah, I got the context of it.
But really, I mean, the younger generation of musicians, and I mean, when I say younger, I'm talking about young, like 17, 16, people who are starting right now. The very concept of playing an instrument is old school to them. And that's something that I think that a lot of musicians need to realize. You can't, it's generational. A 17-year-old kid does not understand why he would sit in a room 24 hours playing guitar when his computer can do the same thing faster and better.
Yeah.
So why would you do that? Just, study the computer programs instead. Study coding, study software. 17-year-olds can use fucking Pro Tools like no one else. but they can't play guitar.
No,
you know?
no, and they
But
can't be
that's-
creative either. That's the other thing. So you've got the creativity in you. The other thing that's missing, and I talk about this all the time on my podcast, is that it's one thing to copy somebody else. It's one thing to be able to produce music at, like, all these sweep arpeggios and using 8 and 9 string guitars and the dient thing and all the rest of it. But it's not alluring music. It isn't creative music. It isn't music that inspires people to pick up a guitar and reproduce what they've done, like what Trey did, Trey Zagtoth continues to do, like what Yngwie does, like what Van Halen. How could we forget Van Halen? Like what these guys do. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. They're just producing stuff into a vacuum, and you just nailed it there when you said that, producing music for people that are going to download it for nothing and then talk shit about you on the internet, or paraphrasing it there, of course. But that is pretty much the state of the music industry in 2019. And why I like your story so much is you come from Brazil. So I've got one of my best friends is Brazilian, by the way. There's heaps of Brazilians here in Australia, if you don't know. But there's a lot of,
I heard about it, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of symbiosis between Australians and Brazilians, man. Like, I'm on the Gold Coast, man, and it's surfing country here, so there's heaps of Brazilians here. It's fantastic, and culturally we get along too. But the thing about you, sorry, as I make my point, is you've come from another country into the US, you've had all of the odds against you, but you figured it out, and you're a success.
Well, Well, I appreciate you saying that, man. And to be honest, I think I pat myself in the back a little too much for that. because I think about that all the time. I always think about, how am I the only one who figured this out from Brazil? Because musicians in Brazil are plenty.
Yes, heaps, and they're great.
Because, unless, like in America, because in America, people grow up listening to Slayer, listening to Pantera, listening to heavier bands. Mm-hmm. We grow up in Brazil listening to Angra, listening to Yngwie, so it's like guitar players that can shred in Brazil is the commonplace. Like, all
normal.
Of my friends can play fast arpeggios. All of my friends can play any Yngwie or Steve Vai lick. Whereas here in America, you show up playing a Dimebag Darrell lick and people freak out.
That's so true.
It is a completely different level of musicianship to begin with. It's a complete America at a level that people will get in 5 years, and that's mostly because we grow up with great music, and more importantly, we don't have opportunity for shit. So we learn that the better we get, the more chances we're gonna get, which is not true. Not in Brazil. In Brazil, oh God, I can go on an hour-long rant about that, because in Brazil, the system is made so nobody can get big. So, it's crazy. It's a crazy thing. The magazines purposely talk shit about other bands, so the bands that they manage can grow up. It's crazy. But that's why I left. You know what I mean? That's why I left. And I was like, you know what? Fuck these guys. I don't need Brazil. I don't need these magazines. I don't need these 2 or 3 musicians. I'm gonna go to America and do it on my own. Mm-hmm. And when I told people in Brazil I would do that, I always got, you're gonna end up delivering pizza. You're never gonna make it in America. They don't like Brazilians there. Dude, none of these things happen.
None of it true.
I'm married to an American wife. We've been together 13 years. I am a U.S. citizen. I pay taxes to this country. I carry a U.S. passport. I've toured with all of my idols. I endorse all of the companies, the instrument companies that I like. All this happened within 2 years of being in America after trying for 10 in Brazil.
Yeah, but you are down to earth. You're very easy to talk to. You've got the talent. Plus, you did something else that I think a lot of people don't want to do, which is you played other people's music. And I constantly hear that too in bloody rehearsal rooms too. Not that I'm in them that often these days, but back in the day, even here, I'm a nobody, right? But other nobodies would accuse me of a covers musician because I played every weekend playing other people's music. They'd say, oh, you're just whoring yourself out. You're just playing somebody else's music. It's like, I don't get how that's reason to be derogatory towards somebody. The only way you get ahead when you aren't schooled and you haven't gone to a university or an academic environment like a conservatorium is by playing other people's music. But that was really
even when you do go, and even when you do go to a conservatory, you have to play other people's music there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's the point. Yeah, well, there you go. So you've done it all. But that's the point. You've done it all, and you've been a success. So whenever anybody says to me, oh, it's too hard for people to become a working musician these days on an international basis, I just say, well, look at Bill. He did it, and he came from another country to do it. So I mean, you do deserve a lot of credit for that. But I just want to switch focus for a second, talk about I Am Morbid. Is that cool? Because
what's that? Yeah, of
just
course.
talk about I Am Morbid because I'm a massive Trey fan. I love his guitar playing, and last 2 weeks ago I was even able to talk to his mum. So I reached out to her on Facebook and asked her if she wanted to be interviewed, and she was cool with it, man. She's a lovely lady. Very.
She doesn't really like I Am Morbid, though.
No, but look, we did talk about that, and what I explained was that look, it's a good thing from the perspective that Trey's music. The appetite for Trey's music is so universal at this point that there's enough space for 2 bands playing his music. That's how I framed it, because I didn't. From my perspective, I've spoken to David, had a really good chat to him, and he actually I'll go on another tangent for a sec, but he mentioned that around the time, now I'm going back on my memory here, but I think you were going to join Morbid Angel at one point. Is that correct?
Me, yeah. That's how the whole thing started.
Yeah. Tell me that. Tell me that story.
I never actually went and auditioned. But what happened was, at the time, I had just left my first band, Celador, on Metal Blade Records, and I was looking for something else. And then the president of Metal Blade texted me or emailed me at the time, and told me Morbid Angel was looking for a guitarist and gave me a contact. Now I didn't know. I didn't know the band. I didn't really know their music, and I definitely didn't know anyone personally. I only knew the name. So I emailed David and I said, I'm interested. Blah blah blah. Thanks, man. And I heard back from him, and he asked me to play 2 songs. Now, you got to keep in mind that at this point in my life, I had never played heavy music like that. Like, I mean, that was totally alien to me. When he sent me Rapture and he said, learn that song, I didn't know where to start.
Yeah,
like,
good point.
Shit.
Yeah.
So, but I did it, and I sent him 2 videos, and he loved it. And he came out and met me in Florida. And by the way, I apologize for keep getting cut out.
No, that's all right.
I was just at a gas station.
It's all good.
So, yeah, to your listeners, I just arrived from a trip from California, and I'm literally driving home from the airport. This is why
no, thanks for doing the interview,
distracted,
man. No, I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, man. I'm glad we were able to do this. Too bad we couldn't do it earlier. But anyway, so David and I started talking, and he came out and saw a show that I had in Florida with whatever band it was. And at the end of the show, he comes up to me and he's like, man, you're really good. I really enjoy what you did. And the long and the short is you're not the guy we're looking for. That's literally, yeah. I'm like, holy fuck. That's talk about being direct.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but why? I mean, there's a million reasons why. Trey's not gonna like you. Just trust me on this one. You're not what we're looking for, but we can stay friends, and we did.
Yeah, cool. Yep.
And then, but see, looking at it now, because now I can play those songs in my sleep, and I know the music really well, and I can say that he was right. If he had hired me back then in 2008. Learning curve would have been massive. Like I would have had to spend like 3 months relearning to pick.
Yeah.
Because it is a completely different art form.
Absolutely.
Like you mentioned Trey, man. If there's a guitar player that I did not grow up listening to, but I learned to respect, is that guy.
He's phenomenal.
Because a lot of the stuff used to sound out of tune to me. Used to sound wrong. I used to say, death metal is people that can't play. I used to say that shit, like 10, 12 years ago. And then I started learning these songs. I'm like, wait a second. It's not out of tune. It's atonal. It's on purpose. Like he's playing, quote unquote, out of key on purpose. Whenever it starts to sound a little melodic, he'll switch out. That is 100% by design. That guy's a genius. He's like a fucked up Eddie Van Halen or something.
Absolutely, mate. You just nailed it. God, we're on the same wavelength about this, and I'm so glad you say that because you're talking about things that I've felt and on an intellectual level have deducted, but because you're playing it and you're confirming it, it's just so It's great to hear, man, to be honest, but you've really got that appreciation for the music.
Yeah. I learned, and David knows I was not always a death metal guy. Before I Am Morbid, I played in Vital Remains for one tour. I did a couple shows in that. But that's because Brian, the singer, was my roommate, and it was kind of like they needed someone. They were going to Brazil, and I went and did with them. But I don't think I did a great job on that tour. I think I did a good job. If I got that tour today again, I would slay. Because now I understand their music.
Yep.
So they just did a tour with us with a fantastic Brazilian guitarist too, Caio Kerriayan.
Okay.
He's their new guitarist. Really good in Vital Remains right now. Brazilians are taking over, man. That's gonna happen.
I think.
I
think the Australians have gone for Hollywood and the Brazilians have gone for the music business. I think in the US, that's what's happening. With the Hemsworth brothers and all the rest of them over there, and in the Hollywood. But all of the Brazilians, the great guitar players out of Brazil, such as yourself and Kiko from Megadeth. Man, you're all starting to emerge.
Yeah, well, Kiko was my first guitar teacher.
There you go.
Actually, he was my only guitar teacher, until no, I had another one. Sorry, I had two guitar teachers, but my first, he was like, from now I was like, I don't know, 10 through like 14 or 15, I took lessons from Kiko. And at the time, he wasn't in Megadeth, of course, he was in Angra, and Angra was a new band, Angra, they might have had an album out by the time I took lessons from him. Yeah, I think Angel's Cry was out and Holy Land was about to come out. And that was my first guitar teacher, man. So, and he is the perfect representation of how dedicated Brazilians can be to guitar. Absolutely. But he's also responsible for it. My entire generation was inspired by him. All musicians my age or younger grew up watching that guy play because he was the only one that had any notoriety. Like I said earlier, Brazil they stack the odds against you. But Kiko happened to be in the band that the magazine, the only rock magazine, was managing. So they got notoriety, and him and Andre Matos, they inspired an entire generation of musicians. And I'm a part of that.
You are indeed. Hey mate, have you got another interview coming through in 2 minutes' time?
Yeah, in 12 minutes.
12 minutes. Okay, you right if I ask you a couple more questions, or do you want to head off? Okay,
no, go ahead.
I feel like, man, I've been looking forward to this interview. I've got to say, I've done at this point. I think I've done over 400 interviews at this point. But you're the one guy that I looked at and thought, I just want to focus in and start asking questions about not just, your whole journey. We've covered that, but this one here's a good question for you. So I had an email interaction, which was very pleasant, by the way, with Suzanne, David's partner or wife. And is she also your manager as well? Or can you explain the relationship between you guys there?
No, she's not my manager. She's not my publicist either, but she does some work as publicist for me. Okay. And everything else, but most of the stuff she does for me is like I Am Morbid related.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Sometimes she'll do some stuff out. She's gotten me interviews before, but it's mostly related to I Am Morbid.
Okay, got you there. So are you self-managed then? Is that how you've been able to do things, or have you got agency representation?
Man, I'm self-managed. I've tried working with managers. I've tried 4 different managers, like some big names too. It never worked. I always do something that pisses them off. And in one instance, I had to fire a manager for being an idiot. Okay. But yeah, I mean, there's a very close friend of mine. I grew up with this guy. His name is Juan Corral, and he's worked in the management of Sepultura, Angra, Hibria, many bands from Brazil. Right now he's doing Edu Falasqui's tour, the old Angra singer. Okay. And he's a guy that has a lot of experience. He booked our Japanese show with Northtale, and he's been kind of managing the band, and I'm kind of slowly bringing him in to be my manager too. Because we have a personal relationship since high school. And, we both, just like I developed my career as a musician, he developed his career big time as a manager, Yeah, so gotcha. Yep. We're kind of doing that now. Suzanne she gets me interviews sometimes, but lately, lately I've been trying to. I've been doing most of it either myself or through Juan.
Okay, yeah. Does it put a lot of hours into your day having to be effectively self-managed, or is it fairly straightforward now that you've got the connections and you know how the music industry works, so to speak?
Yeah, it does. No, it does, man. I was thinking about this the other day because I've been home. I've been home for about 5 weeks right now, which is totally unheard of in my life. And I was starting to feel worthless because I'm not,
Wow.
I'm not like producing any money. So, and I'm like just literally sitting at home. But then I was thinking, holy shit, but it's not really worthless because I wake up at 4 a.m. because that's European time, So I wake up at 4 so I can talk to the label, I can do interviews and all that. And then sometimes I'm doing interviews super late like this one, So all day is is dedicated to, I say, like being Bill Hudson is my full-time job.
Yeah.
So this is something that I've been thinking about. I'm like, wow, I wake up super early, I go to bed super late, and
you're just working hard, mate. You're living the dream and you're working hard and you're putting the necessary effort into it. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up was I read a post that you actually had a moment in your life where you realised that you needed to stop drinking, and that's something that a lot of people go through, isn't it? Where eventually they go... Yeah, well, can you tell that story?
Yeah, I can. 1 second, I'm getting the other guy from the interview messaging me.
Oh, sorry.
Let me just tell him that I'll be done in a second.
No worries. Okay.
All right. So I was a really, really, really big alcoholic, like ridiculous. I couldn't go a day without drinking. I couldn't go. Man, towards the end of it, I couldn't go. It was a 750 every day,
Wow, okay.
of vodka, and I was a morning drinker and the whole 9 yards, man. I was a wreck. And that, how I told you earlier that I was a fat kid and all that. That's what made me a fat kid. And when I decided to get in shape, the first step was to stop drinking. But I had been an alcoholic, an insane alcoholic for 8 years before that, So I'm like, Jesus Christ, how am I going to do that? And when I realized that without that, I would never have a career. Because also, you got to realize that whatever I did do in my career when I was drinking, I burned bridges. Like we went, my first band went on tour with All the Remains. I told their tour manager to fuck off the first day.
All right. Yep.
We've gotten kicked out of tours. I've been kicked out of venues. I was a troublemaker, and not really anywhere else in my life, just as far as that goes, And I was like, this has to stop. This has to stop somehow. So on January 1st, 2012, I took my last drink. It was a New Year's Eve, and it was my New Year's resolution to stop. And
congratulations, brother.
I had to. Thanks, man. It was absolutely necessary. If I didn't do it, you would not be to me right now.
Yeah, I'm so grateful you did, mate, because to that end, mate, you're an extraordinary guitarist and your music needs to be heard by people. So the fact that you figured that part of it out, and I feel like as though we're getting 100% of Bill Hudson with all of these decisions that you've made. There's nothing sort of left to chance. You're out there, you're performing, you've got this great album here, Welcome to Paradise by Northtale. But not just that, you're a performer, mate. It's awesome to see you up on stage, and that's your native environment, being up on stage. I think you're a rock star. That's my take on it, and I say that in a nice way.
Wow, man! You're making me blush here. It's awesome, man.
I'm a fan, dude.
Because I never got the chance to play Australia. It's one of the few countries I've never been to. It's great to know that someone there even knows who I am.
Yeah, well, I think a few people do, mate. I think you'll find there's a hardcore guitar following cohort here in Australia, and you're one of the guys that's part of that. That people follow and they look up to and they're inspired by. So do know that. I don't know whether you get the data from your social media which tells you where people are following, but I think you'll find that all of the people in Australia that really know who you are guitarists and they're musicians and really respect you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, man. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope we meet one day, brother. It'd be cool to catch up. If you come down here or if I'm ever in the States or something like that, I'll link you in on the podcast episode. So if you want to share away, just go for it.
Are we friends on Facebook?
I don't think so, but I'll look
Okay.
you up. I'll look you up. And my name's Andrew Mackay-Smith. I know you know that, but just in case, you got a lot of interviews to get through today. So I'll link you up now. I'm in front of it now, so I'll
Yeah,
I'll
please
chop
do,
that
man.
one.
If you can send me your my Facebook's probably full, so send me yours and I'll add you.
No worries. So it's Bill Hudson too, isn't it? I think it's what it is on.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. All right,
Yes,
just
listen to.
friend. Oh no, you've reached the limit. So that's all right. I'll send
Yeah,
you.
that's why I mean. I have to go. I have to add you myself.
Yeah, no worries. All right, mate. I'll send you a message. But it's been a pleasure talking to you, and good luck with everything.
Likewise, man. Sorry for the distractions a little bit, but thank you so much for the interview and for everything you said about me.
No, it's a pleasure. No worries at all, mate. You need to know it. It's a fantastic thing that you're doing. So good luck with everything, and hopefully we catch up.
Thank you so much, man. Take care, Andrew.
Thanks, brother. No worries. Catch ya. You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith, and that interview subject was the one and only Bill Hudson from I Am Morbid and Northtale. Thanks so much for listening.